Welcome, everybody, to Author Self-Care COVID edition. We're still waiting on Stephen Barnes and Marsheila Rockwell. I'm sure they will be with us shortly. In the meantime, we do have a couple of panelists. We have the fabulous Beth Cato, and we have the exceptional Greg Van Eekhout. Oh, and just as I mentioned her name, we also have the captivating Marsheila Rockwell.
Yay.
At least we will when she unmutes and switches on her video. And I'm sure Stephen will be with us momentarily. So I should just hand it over to you guys and let you introduce yourself, tell us how fabulous you are and what you do.
Go ahead, Beth.
Okay. Hello, I'm author Beth Cato. I have two series out with Harper Voyager. I have the Clockwork Dagger duology and the Blood of Earth trilogy, and lots of other stories and poems published all over the place. You can find out more on my website, bethcato.com. Normally at cons like this, I would be emerging from my wallflower self by handing out cookies to people. So wish I could do that, especially at this panel of all of them, because this is I know in the live version of CoKoCon, this is always a very cathartic, emotional, very, I don't know, healthy panel for everyone, I would say. I think it'd be fair to say. So I'm looking forward to being part of it here on the online version.
I'm Greg Van Eekhout. I miss Beth's cookies. I'm the author of 9 books, some of them for adults, some of them for children. I'm currently writing middle grade books with Harper Teen. Harper Teen? No, Harper Children's. I think that is who my publisher is. So I released a book pre-COVID in 2019, fall of 2019, and I released a book just late July. So one of the things we can maybe discuss is what's different about those two experiences, because I feel like I've got sort of a clean case study samples of what it was like before COVID and what it's like now. And I've never attended this panel at this con, so I didn't know that it was supposed to be positive and cathartic, and so I'll try to keep that in mind. Also, this is my dog, Amelia. If she barks, that's not me, that's her.
Hi, Amelia. Well, I have a couple of cats that are walking around here, so if you see a cat butt, I apologize in advance. So, I'm Marsheila Rockwell. I've got some books out there somewhere. I write, I've written some D&D books. I've written some books with my husband, Jeff. We wrote one called 7 Psychos, which was psychopaths versus zombies entirely in Phoenix. So The Walking Dead meets the Suicide Squad. So that was kind of fun. And I write poetry. I see Linda there. So hi, Linda. And yeah, this is always a good panel. Although somehow I have paneled with Beth many times, and I have still never gotten a cookie. So yeah.
You haven't lived, Marcy.
I know, and it's not good for my mental health.
I've eaten cookies. I mean, I immigrated to the United States. It's kind of compulsory. And, you know, I quite enjoyed them. And then I ate Beth's cookies. And yes, they are something else.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So positive spin on the panel. I should ask, Linda Addison is here. Of all the people attending this convention, Linda is probably the most qualified to speak about COVID and the ability to write during COVID. And Stephen hasn't made it yet. Would you like to sub for Stephen, Linda? I know you're trying to eat, but...
I only have 2 more bites left, and I will politely mute when he shows up, because he's got wonderful, wonderful advice for surviving everything and anything.
Perfect. So I will not ask you to introduce yourself right now because you're finishing those last 2 bites. So I'll just throw out, we've all survived COVID, thank goodness. So many of us have not. how did it work for you? I mean, did it help you? Did it hinder you? Did it just stop you in your tracks? What did COVID do to you?
Should I start?
Yes.
Okay. So it was a religious experience and a spiritual awakening. Because June of last year, as I was ready to start working on feedback on rewrites on my first novel, I spent 9 days trying to breathe. And I had all the symptoms, all of them, that they knew at that time. There's a lot more now. And then after the 9 days, which I got through, I spent 6 months with chronic fatigue, headaches, no appetite. Those are the 3 big ones that really bothered me for 6 months until December 15. The biggest challenge, and brain fog. Mostly I couldn't write. I couldn't work on the rewrites. I just sat and watched crazy TV, things that had like 8 series on, so I could just put them on in the background because I couldn't follow logic too well. And then somewhere in those 6 months came the opportunity to write a story for Marvel's Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda. Oh yeah, I might get that tattooed on my forehead because it's kind of awesome. And the first time that came, I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't think. And then the second time the opportunity came up, I was actually watching TV as they were doing a special on, the Black Panther who died, and I was crying. And then this email came again, and I was like, wow, dude, am I supposed to try this? And everything was like, okay. So I did write the story, and I did get it in the book, but I learned to write it I could only sit up for 20 minutes. So I'd write for 20 minutes, and I'd go lay down for 2 hours, and I kept a notebook next to me, and everything that came out of that weird dreamless state, I'd write down. And I did it in a week. I mean, it was like I didn't know I could do that. And so it was a real humbling and yet sort of crystallizing 6 months for me to realize that all the things that I might want to do, we're all so busy. Every single one of the faces on this panel, the ones that ain't got their faces up and everything else is just busy doing all these things. Well, I couldn't. And I really had to come to terms with that. And so it has stayed with me in a very positive way to just not take stuff too serious and just kind of like smile in a day if I see a bird fly. So, in that way, and also in the way of a lot of people I talk to, creative people, so hard on themselves last year. And I just said to them, look, you're alive, you're breathing. Let that be your celebration moment. Just don't worry about whether you get everything done because it's too hard. There's just the general atmosphere was very difficult. So I think it had a more centering, lower stress, lower expectation effect on me.
How are you feeling now, Linda?
I'm good now. December 15th, I woke up feeling normal, and I didn't believe it. It took me like a week of waking up normal to realize that I was back. So I'm good. I'm fully vaccinated. I try to be as careful as I can. I haven't stopped wearing a mask since March. But I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, I know for us, we went on total lockdown. I've talked before on various panels about my youngest son, Max, was diagnosed with cancer when he was 4 months old. He's doing fine now, but he does have a bit of a compromised immune system. And then our daughter, Frances, has reduced lung function. So like we closed the metal door shut, and we just closed off from the rest of the world. And the kids did online school. Luckily Jeff was already telecommuting. and I haven't been working since my car accident, so that wasn't a huge deal. I got a new job of homeschooling pretty much, but it was, even though, you know, we're introverts by nature and we don't go out a lot anyway, not being able to go out was hard. It was hard on all of us. And you know, we still wear masks when we go out. We're all vaccinated. Luckily, Max is just old enough that he was able to be vaccinated. But, you know, it just, there was a lot of fear in our house, and that was something that, you know, we had to deal with. And a lot of anger too, you know, because of people that we felt like were taking it as seriously as they should be, and then the rest of us having to pay for that. And you know, us having to live in our bubble for that much longer. So there were a lot of complicated feelings going on in our house around COVID, in addition to, you know, I already deal with depression and anxiety, PTSD from my accident. My daughter has OCD, ADHD, depression and anxiety. You know, we have a whole slew of mental issues in the house already. So then when you put all the rest of that stuff in the mix, it's been a hard 18 months. So, and it looks like it's not necessarily going to let up very much, although the kids are back in school. So, yeah, fingers crossed that we get through it soon.
I'll go. This crisis has put a spotlight on the societal and structural weaknesses in America, at least, but it's also put a spotlight on mine when it comes to work, because uncertainty is a driver of insecurity, and insecurity is something that writers face, not just like on a psychological and emotional level, but literally our jobs are unsecure. We are dependent upon, from contract to contract, and from, in traditional publishing at least, my opportunities to publish depend on a team of people working for a corporation's judgment whether my work is worth investing in money in. So that's going to create an insecure environment. And then when you add a whole bunch of different kind of uncertainties in everything from supply chain to paper availability to people who are available to work in warehouses. Just one weird example is that books sometimes have what they call specs, cover specs. So that would be like the embossing and the foil on the cover. Well, they found out that hand sanitizer actually interacts badly with the stuff that the glue they use to make those covers foil embossed. So that like little premium upgrade to cover production quality is something that's missing. Now the uncertainty is like, but would the publisher invest in that money to get my cool foil embossed cover if it weren't for COVID and hand sanitizer and weird chemical reactions? Or is that just something that they're saying because they don't want to invest that money? So that all of a sudden adds a completely additional level of weirdness in the writer's brain, in my brain, that is a thing to cope with. So realizing how uncertainty and insecurity is the part of this job that makes me unhappy, I tried to follow the advice I always give writers, which is stop worrying about outcome. Stop worrying about what happens after you write the book. The thing you have control of is writing the book. So it's been sort of a crucible to see how much I believe in my own advice and how much I'm able to follow my own advice. And I don't have a final conclusion to that report yet. That's still a work in progress. As I said, I released the book in 2019, fall of 2019, where everything was going great. And it was the most publisher support I've ever gotten, just in terms of the actual monetary investment, sending me places. They sent me on a nice school tour. They sent me to Book Expo America, which is a trade show in New York, a big publishing trade show. It's now July of 2021, and obviously I wasn't being sent anywhere. I did a bunch of Zoom stuff, which is low financial investment on the publisher. And so again, the uncertainty question is like, is that just because COVID that my release in 2021 is so different from my 2019 release? I mean, obviously I can't go to Book Expo America even if there weren't COVID, because that trade conference no longer exists. It's completely dissolved. They literally can't send me there. But if it did exist, would they send me there? If they could send me places, would they send me places this year? So again, I'm really just trying to focus on the part I have control of, which is just sitting on my butt and typing words onto a screen.
That's hard. That's a really hard contrast between years like that. I really felt last year for the people who had debuts in like March, April, May, June last year. I was just like, and at the same time, I mean, that's when so many people lost their jobs. I mean, how do you even buy books? Just everything around that, and the supply issues too. It's just nightmarish. Well, for me, I began this wonderful COVID social experience already going into it with depression, agoraphobia, general anxiety disorder, the whole variety pack of neuroses that I've lived with for most of my life. And it's kind of exacerbated all that, especially the agoraphobia aspect, because a lot of that goes toward, being very worried about public interactions and being around people. And the past year and a half has not positively affirmed those opinions of other people. Kind of the opposite. So, it's been a lot of time where I've pretty much just been leaving the house to do grocery shopping a couple times a week and still, doing some things like that. I was fortunate in that my son, he's autistic. He was a freshman in March of last year when everything kind of crashed down. He actually handled the transition to online learning wonderfully because the academics are his strong point. He's desperately in need of the social interaction and things like that. But so last year, his whole sophomore year, he handled it wonderfully. He was just above me in his room doing his schoolwork all day, and I was trying to work and type in my office. And that worked out pretty well. And then now he's back in school. He turned 16 the week that vaccines became available to age 16 and up in Arizona. So I was like, happy birthday, kid, you're getting shot. And that's when he got his first dose. So it's been hard for me because it's really exacerbated all that. And on top of that, and I'll be very candid about this, perimenopause is hellish. And dealing with those hormone fluctuations, and that has made the depression and panic attacks a lot worse. And on top of that, I go through, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks a month where, like Linda was talking about, the brain fog aspect of long COVID. One of the reasons that aspect of COVID scares me so much is perimenopause is horrible about brain fog. And I'm like, my gosh, if I ever got COVID, I mean, I'll be doomed if the brain fog gets any worse. I mean, how will I get anything done? So that's a very scary thing. So, and here it's just all about continuing to mask up, nursing a very paranoid distrust of other human beings, and trying to protect ourselves as best we can.
I think Stephen is here.
Yes. Sorry, I'm late. I had to get my son some food. So, if self-care, starts with taking care of yourself and then expands outwards from there to your family and community and so forth. But you should never forget that the core of it is you. It's like when you're on a plane, they say in case of cabin depressurization, put your mask on first. If you start taking care of other people first, you run out of juice. You become a bucket. I like to be a well. So there's a real difference there, connect to that life force. So what is the question? What's up? What can I do for you?
Well, ain't this a bummer? And how have you dealt with it this past?
Oh, well, yeah.
I'm not the moderator. That's my interpretation.
Oh, okay. I thought you were the moderator. Who is the moderator?
I thought it was Hal.
It's Hal? Okay.
The moderator is the first person who asks that question.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to solve a problem at the charity auction and multitasking. So I'm technically the moderator, but I know you guys can run with this pretty well. So the initial question was just, how has COVID affected you?
I actually feel a little bit guilty. I mean, because I work from home, it hasn't interrupted work at all. In fact, it's enabled us to get more work done. My son being home from school meant that we could focus more on making sure that we knew exactly what tasks he had to do in order to go to school. So he came out of it with his best grades ever. In terms of, the most important thing is dealing with the stress. But stress is, and let me go into a little bit of a talk here that I do frequently, that stress isn't a problem. The problem is strain. Physiologically, the difference between stress and strain is that stress is pressure per unit area from an engineering point of view, whereas strain is deformation per unit length. So stress is this, okay? Something's pushing at you. Strain is this. This is what you have to prevent, is not the stress, because you need that to trigger an adaptation response in both mind, body, and spirit. But when you get more stress than you can healthfully adapt to, that's when it hurts you. That's when it becomes strain. That's what you want to avoid. Luckily, there is actually an answer. There really is. And what breaks my heart is how few people believe this or will pay attention to it. Because I can teach you how to deal with stress in 5 minutes a day, and I'm not kidding at all. The trick is that it's not 5 minutes all at one time. It's 1 minute at least every 3 hours. You stop and do 60 seconds of deep diaphragmatic belly breathing. Stress, in one sense, your physicality is a combination of breath, movement, and alignment. Okay, if you are breathing, standing, and moving as if you are not stressed, your body doesn't register strain. So, I mean, the link between psychological stress and physiological strain is why lie detectors work. Galvanic skin response, pupil dilation, heartbeat rate, blood pressure, stuff like that. If you're not registering the physiological symptoms of stress, you don't feel it. It's just like, oh, I'm in the center of the storm. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's not hurting me. There's a lot happening, but I'm functioning here. And the more your family needs you, the more critical it is that you take care of yourself. If you're under serious stress, then do 1 or 2 minutes of breathing every hour, just top of the hour. Stop whatever you're doing, set a timer, and do 60 seconds of deep, slow, diaphragmatic belly breathing. When you get strained and stressed, you start breathing high in your chest. When you're breathing low and slow, that's how a martial arts master breathes when somebody pulls a knife on them, so that they are not reacting to the fear of what might be about to happen, but they're saying, what is the situation? What can I do? What is happening here? And you can deal with it the best that you can. So that's the most important thing, is that during that period of time, I made sure to take care of myself. I made sure that the stress did not become strain. That meant, taking care of my health, getting plenty of sleep, trying to eat well. I do love my buttermilk bar donuts, and getting plenty of rest, plenty of sex, just getting as many hugs as I can, having fun. It's as self-medication, as self-care, so that I can keep in touch with the part of me that is excited about life, optimistic about life. And the more the people around you are doom and gloom and their problems, the more critical it is that you protect yourself so that you can be of service to your family and your community and to yourself. That's the, just basic thing. So COVID was like a reset button in a lot of ways, because when you're balanced, that, heat and pressure make diamonds if you're balanced. Otherwise, they will tear you to pieces.
I want to say, Stephen, I used to listen to you on KPFK Hour 25 in Los Angeles. And,
I enjoyed that show.
Well, we enjoyed listening to you because I felt from you what I was getting lessons on how to be a writer and a human being at the same time
Well, I didn't know how to be a man, because I was raised by my mother and my sister. My dad wasn't there. So I had to go into, and I was also surrounded by a culture that told me I wasn't fully human. So I couldn't take anything for granted. I specifically went looking for instructions. How do I be a mature human being? How do I be an adult? How do I be a man? So that stuff was all conscious. So I think about that stuff a lot so I can talk about it easily.
And I appreciate you paying that forward, because I would gain a lot from listening to you.
Absolutely. I am Larry Niven and a gentleman named Steve Muhammad, my karate instructor. They are the two most important men in my life. I cannot give anything directly to them except honor them and do all I can to share what they taught me.
Awesome. Anyway, I didn't want to derail the panel. I just wanted to express appreciation for that. So thank you.
In regards to what you said, Steve, about the stress, it's really dovetails really nicely with a class that I just started taking. It's called Fairy Tales and Burnout.
Ooh.
And it uses this book by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. It's the secret burnout, the secret of unlocking the stress code. And they talk about a lot of the same things that you are talking about, that there's a difference between, they don't call it strain, but there's a difference between the stress and the stressor.
Yes.
And you can get rid of one, but that doesn't take care of the other. And you have to complete the stress cycle in your body, so your body knows that you're safe.
This sounds like a beautiful resource. You just said something so important. Get out of your damn head. Your body knows the truth. Your brain is constantly trying to make models of the universe, and it's always wrong. It might approach it, but it can't get there. The heart wants what it wants. Your heart will lead you down some really ugly paths if you are not also safe. Opening your heart can attract predators. The abusers, people who say, oh, this person is leading with their heart. They're going to be easy for me. So, but going with your body, the body does not lie, or it lies less than any other part of you. So connecting with your body so that you feel safe. You have the right, you got to start with knowing that you have the right to feel safe in the world. That the meaning of life is to seek joy, that you should love yourself. Everything comes, if you know that you love yourself, that you have the right to be safe and to feel safe in the world, then it's just finding the resources that you need to feel joy. But so many people don't even realize that they can have joy as a goal, that they can decide to be happy. And they say, okay, what do I need to be happy? Let me spend the next year getting the resources I need to be happy that I'll then be able to use for the rest of my life. You have to start there with loving yourself, acknowledging yourself, forgiving yourself, caring about yourself, being willing to fight for yourself. If you've got that, the rest of it is just details.
I'm curious how the past year and a half, 5 years, 7 years, I can't remember how long this pandemic's been going on, has living under these conditions and working under these conditions, do you think it's reflecting in the actual work you're doing, either in your process of producing writing or the actual content of the writing itself?
Are you asking someone in particular?
Well, I'm not the moderator, so I don't want to call on people, but Beth, why don't we hear from you? I guess I'm the moderator now.
Hey, yeah. Like as it was said, whoever mentioned it first gets the role. For me, it has not directly impacted what I am writing. I started on a big project last year, and I've been working on rewriting it this year, and that's very independent of COVID and everything that's gone on with that. I would say I'm trying to avoid writing specifically about what has happened in the past year, in part because I don't want to date what I'm writing involving specific 2021 experiences. But then it's also like, I happen to write a short story in fall of 2019 that involves a quarantine situation. It's a story I love. I think it's very well written. I cannot sell that thing. And I've been getting feedback from editors, we're not buying anything that's quarantine related and all this stuff. And it's like, I wrote this before all this happened. And now I can't even sell it. And who knows how long it's going to go on. I'm at a point where I'm wondering if I just have to trunk it for a few years because of the situation. And that's frustrating because I feel like it's a solid story, but you have to go with the market and what it needs. And I think the market right now wants more escapism than it does to kind of immerse in what's happened. But who knows? I mean, everything comes around again, right? I'm sure in 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to see dramas that are set against this backdrop, and that's how it's going to play out.
Try it again in 6 months.
And it could even be that short. I mean, it's cyclical.
Yeah. I wrote one story that dealt with a world in which we are all living in separate silos, you know. And it was just a very short story that came to me while I was driving between Phoenix and Los Angeles during the very beginning of the pandemic. While I was driving, the idea came to me. Aside from that, no, you know, my assumption is that all the plagues pass. We're dealing with one right now. It's horrifying because it got politicized, and a lot of good people are hurt. And I think that one of the best things you can do is to make sure that people know that this isn't the end of the world. We've been through this many, many, many times. You know, we know how to deal with this. A lot of people are going to die, but the human race goes on. You know, I think that if you can find it within yourself to forgive yourself for the errors, then we as a country have to be able to forgive each other, our neighbors, ourselves, for the mistakes that we make. We're all doing the best we can. If we can write stories that kind of reflect that and help people feel happy, you're doing something really positive because there are so many doomsayers. You know, oh my God, the sky's falling. And for a lot of people, the world has ended, you know, but those of us who can see beyond that, who can see love and joy and hope and possibility, I think that we need to speak of these things and not be afraid to be positive and optimistic.
I've kind of taken the other tack, but it sort of and sort of not, because I've been writing a lot of horror. My fantasy work has always trended dark anyway, but I've been focusing a lot on horror because there's been a lot of it being published. It seems like there's a kind of a mini explosion, which doesn't really surprise me because horror is something that we turn to a lot of times when the world outside is horrific, because I think there's some catharsis there, but there's also you know, it is a form of escapism because it's not happening to us.
I think horror can be incredibly positive. My wife is, you know, a great horror writer, and we've spent infinite hours talking about these things. And horror enables you to experience fear that doesn't kill your children.
Right.
You know, it's not about you having bone cancer or waking up coughing blood. It's about something out there. And then hopefully, you know, in a short piece of work, it could be a real nasty. You can leave them in the dark because they can turn the page and read another story. In a longer work, I think that we have more responsibility to leave people in a good place.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know. I think that
my short work does. Yeah, horror is great.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you that it does. With something longer, I think that you have to end on a note of hope.
I think so. I mean, when Stephen King wrote Cujo or Pet Sematary, he ended down, and he had a hard time wanting to publish those. But I think that in his overall oeuvre, we know that in general, he's positive. So a down ending actually allows you to look at his next work with a little bit of fear, so that if he then leaves you on an up ending, he has actually helped you process your negative emotions more positively, because he's looking at the roller coaster of his entire collection.
I write books for children, middle grade. So I think that while also in adults, I don't feel my adult readers have an inalienable right to hope. I like to leave them hopeful, but they don't have a right to it. Whereas I think my kid readers do have that right, and it is my responsibility and job to give it to them. So that is in contrast with my personal feelings of misanthropy and pessimism and absolute disgust and fury at the way we're mistreating each other and mistreating the world. So there's a tension I have to find between that. So I do want to give kids the idea that they have hope, and more importantly, that they have agency, that they can make a difference and they can change this world, and that they have a responsibility to do so. But I also want to expose the bad actors and carefully choose my villains. My villains can't just be arbitrarily bad people. I want to show them examples of the actual people who are their enemies in this world that they have to fight. And my conclusion is that in this time we're living in, it's the power of corporations. So my villains have recently tended to be toxic capitalism. I've been able to actually explain shareholder value in a kid's book and how that works and why that's a problematic thing. I've been able to explain to them the tech companies that give us such awesome devices that improve and change our lives are not doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, and that also represent an evil. So I think the way COVID is going to inject my work, there's also has to be a recognition that oftentimes bad things happen, not because they're imposed from us up from above, from powerful entities, but that we cooperate with those entities and that we model our behaviors on things that are not beneficial to us, but are beneficial to people who are manipulating us. And that's a difficult, not necessarily an easy thing to do in a book for a 9-year-old, but I feel it's an artistic challenge that I want to take on, and ultimately a responsibility that I want to take on. In terms of my process, during COVID, it sucks. It totally sucks, because I get a lot of energy from writing in coffee houses and in pubs. I don't want to interact with people, but I like to be around them. I like the friction and the heat that comes from having people and their molecules moving around me, and that's not been something that's been available to me. I am effing sick of sitting at home and doing things versus on Zoom. So I let myself sort of get discouraged by that, to the point that I was becoming more of a shut-in than I needed to be. So I've been just taking my iPad and riding my bike to the beach and trying to spend half an hour actually writing outside, even if I can't see my screen because of the stupid glare and there's like pelicans and seagulls taking crap on me. Just being outside and just being in a different environment has been something that I have to remind myself that I really need, and I'm trying to give that to myself more often. All right, somebody else be moderator and pose a question.
So I'm multitasking still. So I've heard half of the panel in one ear and half of something else in the other ear, and not really caught everything. So I can't really throw out questions because I don't know what you've already answered. But if anybody has a question for the panelists, please post it in the chat, and I will pass that on to the panelists.
What are you guys working on? I mean, one thing to look at might be, what are the works in progress that you are actually engaged with right now? If you'd like to speak about your process as you discuss the products, the projects, that might be cool too. But just, what's making you happy in your work right now? What are you doing?
Excellent question. Thank you, Stephen.
Well, I have been spending an inordinate amount of time on a pitch for a tie-in property that I can't tell you about because I have a non-disclosure agreement, but I'm super excited about it. And I don't have a contract yet, so even though I've spent a bazillion hours and a lot of money on research, I still might not get the book, but I have enjoyed the process regardless. it's pushed me out of my comfort zone, which was
A good thing.
nice. Yeah, so that's been cool. And then mostly I've just been doing shorter stuff. I have a novel that I'm trying to repurpose, but that's kind of still stewing. So I have parts of it from before, and I'm trying to figure out how to reuse them. So that's something that's going on in my back brain. But yeah.
Beth?
Well, for me, I've been trying to keep some minor goals going. Every month, I try and write at least one new short story, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. And I continue to write poetry throughout the year, and especially in November and April on the Writer's Digest Poetic Asides blog, they do a poem a day project, and they post poem prompts every day. And I managed to do that, every day of those months, and that's when I get most of my poems for the year written. So if anyone out there is a poet and needs those prompts, definitely look for those in November and in April on the Poetic Asides. And you can even go back to past years and look at those. And then, like I said, I've been working on this project that I did the full rough draft last fall, revised it early on in the year. And then in the process of getting edits back on that from my agent, needed to break apart the project and broke apart myself instead. So I ended up having to shelve it for 2 months for my own mental health and just continue to work on shorter stuff, kind of reaffirm my faith in that, hey, I am still a writer, even if I can't sell anything to anyone, and kind of come back to it, and finally started work on that again in July, and have discovered kind of an enjoyment in that, and that, okay, this is worth continuing to work on, just slowly at my own pace. And I'm fortunate in that I have an agent that she is wonderfully supportive and is like, take your time, do what you need to do. We are under no deadlines. You take care of yourself foremost, do all that. And having that kind of support really means a lot, especially when you are not only rock bottom, but you're digging in the basement, So I'm just slowly making progress on that, and hopefully I'll have that to a point where I can send that back to her coming up in the next month or two. And it's hard. Publishing, especially in traditional publishing, it tears you apart. And Greg was talking a lot about how publishing itself, it's based on uncertainty, it's contract to contract. And if you already go into publishing in a very fragile mental state where you need that affirmation to kind of identify yourself, and this is what I am, when you lose that structure, you can lose everything. And that's a very dangerous place to be in.
It really is. I pray that you'll rest your being on a sense of what is unchanging inside yourself, rather than what the outside world says, or even ego stuff. There is a place inside you that is solid, and you really do have to work to get there. And it's not, unfortunately, it is not easy. I feel so much sympathy for people who it's so easy to get lost and so easy to lose your balance. Forgive yourself for that, and know that inside yourself, there is that love and that joy. Just like you could have a memory from grade school. Every time you think about it, you want to cry because you did something stupid.
Yeah.
The positive memories are exactly the same. You can deliberately access your positive memories and just decide to be there. So I hope that you find that. You seem to be a really lovely person.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard. The negatives scream and the positives whisper.
Oh, yes, which is why meditation is so important. You get quiet enough. Let me tell you one of the great secrets of advanced meditation. You are not the voices in your head. You are the one listening to the voices. Mm-hmm. If you can get the difference between those and begin to interrogate that difference, you have the door to freedom. You really do. What about, what about Greg? Greg, what are you working on?
Oh, well, let's see. I just finished copy edits on a middle grade book, Fenris and Mott, that'll be out next July. It's about the Fenris wolf as a puppy being abandoned or landing in contemporary Los Angeles, and a girl who finds him and has to protect him from all the Norse gods that want to destroy him, and protect the world from Fenris, because Fenris want to eat everything. So that was a fun book to write, really therapeutic for me, because every time I start a book, I never know what the tone or what the emotion is going to be. It's sometimes it's a struggle, and sometimes it's just fun, and I liked out in Fenris and Mott was fun. That leaves me out of contract, however, going back to the uncertainty. So I'm going out on submission again with a proposal for another middle grade book in a week or two. So basically, I'm trying to fill my time with non-writing activities, so I don't focus on the whole part of publishing that is now going to be outside of my hands for a bit. So that's when it's time for me as the writer to not write, which is sometimes also important, is just not doing the work. Sometimes it's just about playing guitar, or sometimes it's just about, I can't really do this now, but travel and just filling the well and fueling the engine a little bit. And that part I have to remember is the part of being a writer and a person. And sometimes that balance has to shift towards one end or the other. Right now it's towards being a person.
If you have to choose, be a person.
Well, there's nothing worse than a writer who is just a writer and not also like a human being, because that's weird, creepy, and sad. So I try not to be.
It also doesn't exist. What they can be is a writer and an asshole. A writer. I mean, seriously, we're always people, not always nice people.
Yeah, totally true.
I'm always juggling multiple projects, because there's always something that's being polished while something else is being written, while something else is being planned. That way I can always, what I want to do is follow my hungers as much as possible, to spend as much time as possible only with people I love, only doing things that I love, and hopefully making a lot of money in the process. So, solving that problem, first you have to give yourself permission to even address the problem. I want to have real fun and make a lot of money in the process. Or I want to make a lot of money and have fun in the process and do good in the world, or whatever. So, like right now, I just finished a 1-page treatment of what might be my next script. I've got a couple of episodes of a television series called Horror Noir that's being done by AMC and Shudder that will be on in October. Jesus Christ, that's just next month. And there are a couple of scripts that are out there, and there are business meetings and so forth. So, it's a matter of trying to do a little bit every day. The whole thing is, I have this whole system of writing that's based on write a book a year with a sentence a day, is what I tell people. And then, of course, their brains short circuit. Wait a minute, the math doesn't work. But the truth is that if the only work you have to do is 1 sentence a day, that's all you have to do. Everything after that is play. If you feel like writing more, go right ahead. Because by the time you've actually done everything to write 1 sentence, you're in a position where you might as well write a paragraph, might as well write a page. I mean, if it's flowing, but you only have to force yourself to do that, to take that first step. That's the work. You do the work. I don't care how you feel. I don't care what's going on. You're going to do, because you're a writer, right? Well, writers write. They don't necessarily sell. Writers write. And I'm a writer. I'm also an author. But if I had to choose, I'd be a writer, because I could be an author if somebody else wrote my damn book. What I want is to spend my life writing. I love writing. So somebody asked a question here about, I recently took a lot of flack for saying you can choose to be happy. Can someone parse the difference between personal happiness as opposed to just not suffering from depression? There's a deep subject, and anyone who's suffering from depression should have a doctor, should have medical intervention in their circle. If you have that medical intervention, then I will say the following. Your emotions are created by a combination of 3 things: what you focus on, how you move your body, and the language that you use. You can actually shift yourself, just like focusing on the bad thing that happened can make you feel bad. Focusing on the good things that happened. The last time you made love with someone who really adored you and looked in your eyes and you could tell you were the world to them. That kind of thing, you can jump your energy. You can teach yourself to do that, assuming that you don't have a medical issue. But every single day, I go through a ritual where I am moving my body, chanting affirmations, about what I am grateful for in life. I'm so grateful for the people who love me and trust me, my daughter, my son, my beautiful, brilliant wife. It's like I actually make, while I'm moving, I'll do this while I'm doing Tai Chi. Okay, I'll chant out loud. You find the thing that makes you happy and you do it deliberately as a choice. You do these things every day, because otherwise the world can poison you. There's so many people around you that just want to eat you, want you to crawl in the gutters with them, want you to join their pity parties. You can't do that. The world needs people who are living in their light as much as possible. If you forgive yourself for your darkness, it's easier to find your light. Just love yourself. We're all doing the best we can.
We do have some questions in the chat. I know some of you have been answering them already. The one that I think fits best here is Gilead's question. What's the difference between personal happiness and suffering from depression?
Stephen just answered that.
You just
question.
answered that one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I could say that not suffering from depression is being at neutral. It's like moving away from pain. That's the first step. You definitely want to do that. But after that, ask yourself the question, with everything in your life, how can I do this and find joy in the process? You guys are smart. Intelligence is problem solving. Once you make a habit of asking myself, how can I do this and be happy? How can I clean the cat box and be happy? By remembering that I love little purring cats, and cleaning the cat box makes my cat healthy, so he'll be happy. So every time I clean the cat box, I'm actually saying to my kitty that I love him. It's the same thing as changing a diaper. Changing a diaper is nasty, but just wait until your kid hasn't taken a crap in 2 weeks, and you will be happy to change a diaper.
Sure.
So make it deliberate.
If I can create some context for that, I was talking in an online discussion, and somebody asked about something about happiness. I don't even remember what started, but I said, you can choose to be happy. And somebody said, oh, look, here's the guy that doesn't understand depression. And then I tried to argue that we're not talking about depression. We're talking about making a conscious choice to.
We're not talking about medical depression.
Exactly.
If you've got a medical problem that needs lithium or something like this, for God's sake, have a doctor in your circle. But if you're not talking about that, sure. If you've been hurt, abused, there's plenty of stuff in the world to be afraid of. To me, depression is fear with no one to fight and nowhere to run. So getting in touch with yourself. If I'm about going to die in the morning, they're going to take me out and shoot me. I'm either going to be trying to figure out how to get out of that cell, or I'm going to enjoy my last moments on earth. I will focus on what is positive, because this is all I've got, and I will be happy in my life. I will do whatever it takes. But one of the things, I'll say again, doctor, if you've got a medical issue, have a doctor, a therapist. For God's sake, don't play with that shit. That's not a joke.
Yeah, Gilead, I would definitely just, because I'm one of those people, I get really mad when people say, oh, sunshine and exercise will take care of all of your problems, because it won't. Not if you have OCD. That's not going to suddenly take care of your brain chemistry. It can help a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that it can't help. So I think if you just clarify that you're not talking about brain chemistry issues.
I would also, as a writer, and if you are embarking on a writing career or still struggling at it, you might consider some prophylactic therapy, because you're going to encounter weird situations with people looking very closely at your work, a lot of attention that can be uncomfortable, the uncertainty of publishing, the task of managing your own emotions and psychologies in a way that's going to result in some actual work. These are all weird things that I don't know that at least I am not well evolved to necessarily handle. So consider just finding a qualified professional person to talk to, even if you don't suffer from, and I do suffer from depression, and I do the medication, and I do all the exercises, and I do the therapy. Even if I didn't, I think therapy would have been a good thing for me to try before I started becoming a professional writer. It's a weird job. You can do weird things to your head.
I think therapy is great. You know, therapy, coaching, various things like that. I've leaned on those several times in my life and am better because of it. You know, I would never criticize anybody for seeking out assistance, for God's sake. You know, it's not a joke.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I had a pretty crappy childhood, and I was afraid to go to therapy for a really long time because I didn't want to dredge all that stuff up. You know, it was bad enough going through it the first time. I didn't want to go through it again. I had to start therapy after my car accident because I could not get in a vehicle without having a panic attack. And it's made a huge difference. I mean, there's still a lot of things that scare me about it and that I don't really want to talk about, but I wish I had done it a long time ago. So even if it scares you, it is valuable and it's helpful. And if you don't find somebody that you click with immediately, don't give up. That's just one person, right? Not every therapist is for every person, and you shouldn't let that stop you from finding somebody who can help you on your path to healing. So,
should we do, as we're coming up on the hour, should we do the usual panel thing, and we can all mention like what we've got coming out, what we want people to know about, where they can find us on the internets and the social medias and stuff like that?
Absolutely. I was just going to suggest that. And if you can tie in Duncan's question, but add why. I see that a number of you have answered that in the chat. Which work of yours would you recommend for someone who hasn't read anything by you? But why? Why would that be the good first choice?
Well, for me, you can find more about me at bethcato.com. Links to all my books, stories, poetry on there. I bake a lot. Every Wednesday, you'll find new recipes on there in my Bread or Not segment, lots of cookies and goodies. So I can get you set up there with lots of delicious goodies that I can't give you since this isn't a live con, but I provide the recipes for you to make them at home. I suggested my short story collection, Red Dust and Dancing Horses. To me, it really gets to the heart of my work, and it's a collection that really explores what it means to be human and the full emotional experience around that. And it also supports a great small press, Fairwood Press out of Washington. And I think small presses right now especially need a lot of love. So, and if you look on the Discord, the book's being featured by the Virtual Steampunk Book Club this coming month. So if you want, in a couple weeks, you can see me on another Zoom session and we'll be talking about the book.
My novel Lion's Blood is probably the best thing I've done. It speaks to my feelings about race in America in the most direct way I possibly could. And in terms of my philosophies of life, the Warrior's Journey course at www.realwarriorsjourney.com is probably the best thing that I've created in terms of a toolbox for loving yourself and protecting yourself and finding that center. So those would be the things I'd recommend. Or just friend me on Facebook. I talk about this crap all the time.
I'm Greg Van Eekhout on Twitter. I'm Greg Van Eekhout on Instagram. Twitter is where I do my most babbling, and my website is writingandsnacks.com. For book recommendations, if you like adult stuff, I guess I'd recommend California Bones. It's like the start of a trilogy I did for Tor about wizards who eat the bones of Pleistocene dragons and stuff like that at La Brea Tar Pits, and there's a heist. For kids' books, I would recommend Weird Kid. It's about an alien shapeshifter who loses his ability to control his shape on his first day of middle school. And I'm recommending this one because it just came out in July. And the more of these you buy, the more likely that people will give me money to do more books. So I would appreciate it. Buy crates of them.
okay. You can find me at marsheilarockwell.com or on Twitter at Marsheila Rockwell. As most of you know, I go by Marcy because nobody can spell Marsheila. I guess something that it is pretty me. It doesn't have any magic in it, but the book that Jeff and I co-wrote, my husband, Jeff Marriott, who's author, also a writer and has done some panels here this weekend. Seven Psychos, the one I talked about, psychopaths versus zombies, really combines two things that I'm very interested in, neuroscience and psychopathy, and then, you know, horror. So, and I also have a poem coming out in Auger magazine, AUGER.com. It's online. That is sort of a scathing criticism about the way people react and don't react to the murdered, missing Indigenous women and girls epidemic that we have. I myself am Native American, and I had a sister who went missing for a really long time, and nobody cared. And that happens so frequently that it's heartbreaking, and so few people know. And that poem really means a lot to me. It should be out sometime this month, so that would really give you some insight into who I am and what I think and what's important to me. So.
And if I'm multitasking properly, that covers everybody. So thank you all. Thank you to our four panelists, Stephen Barnes, Beth Cato, Marsheila Rockwell, Greg Van Eekhout, and our super sub for the beginning of the panel, Linda Addison. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for presenting, and please enjoy the rest of your convention. I'll be closing this chat down now.
Thanks, Hal.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.